This is Eric Skye for the Peghead Nation, and I'm going to talk a little bit about my guitar. This is a Santa Cruz OO-Skye. It is a signature model guitar, which has been an incredibly exciting and humbling experience for me. They have been making this model for about 5 years now, and it's one of their best-selling guitars, which is really, really exciting. The one that I have with me today is just about brand new. It's just about a month or so old, so I now have 2 of them. So my relationship with that company goes back about maybe 7 or 8 years, and I've been playing Santa Cruz guitars all that time. All my records are Santa Cruz guitars. And I think about 7 or 8 years ago, Richard Hoover made me a OO guitar, which just became my only guitar. Just like as soon as I had a OO, that was it. It was the only guitar I used for everything. And I was walking the kids to school one day in the rain, and where I live in Portland, Oregon, and Richard called me up on the cell phone and said, "What do you think about doing a signature guitar?" And it was pretty exciting. I think it was kind of like Steve Jobs asking you if you wanted to do a signature telephone. And I was pretty beside myself, and we worked together for about 8 months on this design, which was based on my original OO, but we just thought, what else would we do? What would we do different, having played that guitar for so long now? And so this is what we did. We went with a Adirondack top, although this one actually has an Italian spruce top. You can tell it has a lot of bear claw in it, which I personally really like. I just think it's cool. There's definitely a lot of people who believe that it is stiffer than the equivalent non-bear clawed top would, so that may or may not be true. I just think it looks cool. I like the way it catches the light, and it's groovy. The main OO-Skye guitar is an Adirondack top. And the differences are pretty subtle. I think the Italian top may be just slightly more detailed, maybe brighter for want of a better term. But they're both pretty amazing, I think. The other thing that we went with is a cocobolo for the backs and sides. I think there's a few very key things about this guitar that make it so great, in my opinion, and one of them is definitely the cocobolo. This is it's a rosewood. It's from the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, I believe, but it's a very dense wood. If you go to the shop and you pick up Brazilian or certainly mahogany or maple or all the other woods you'd have for backs and sides, cocobolo is like so much heavier and so much denser. So there's different schools of thought about the function of the back, and of course I'm no builder, but is it a resonating thing, or is it kind of a good stiff back that's projecting things forward? And I personally think that that's what's going on with the cocobolo. It's just very dense, it's very hard wood, and I find that one of the key things about this guitar is that it projects really well. I would say 99, well, maybe not that high, but most of my gigs I use just a microphone, or in house concert setting, I just play al naturel, and I think that that's part of why that works so well, because I just think it's pushing things forward. Some other really key things I think about a OO guitar in general is the 12-fret body design, which a lot of people know puts the bridge kind of more in the center of really what is the speaker of the guitar. So I'm pretty passionate about that. I really feel like 12-fret guitars are just more three-dimensional and bigger sounding for their size. It's just better overall. The other thing about most OOs and guitars of this period is this small rectangular bridge. It has a small footprint. I think that's key. I think if there was more wood down here, you'd be dampening a place that you just don't want to dampen, in the same sense that you don't really want to put your finger on your speaker in your stereo, right? So allowing that to kind of move more freely, I think, is also a really key thing happening here. On the other end of the guitar, the slotted headstock, I am also a big believer in. I think it's basically creating a much steeper break angle, which is probably driving more of the energy of the strings into the top of the guitar. So remember that acoustic guitar has no electricity going through it, right? So the only energy in it is the vibration of the strings. So I think having good break angle, which on this end is achieved with a slotted headstock, and with this end, it's achieved by having first of all, it has the break angle that it has because of the bridge, but also the saddle itself is tilted about 5 degrees back. So maximizing the energy going into the guitar, if that makes sense. The other thing that's unique about this guitar, and I think it may be the only one in the Santa Cruz line, is that it's a 24.9-inch scale. This is something that I probably geeked out about more than anything, is scale length. I personally believe that it's one of the key sort of factors in the way a guitar sounds and feels. I think that's why when you take a Stratocaster and you put humbuckers in it, it still sounds like a Stratocaster, or vice versa. I think it just really changes a lot of things. So anyway, the idea is that with a shorter scale guitar, of course, which is the distance between the nut and the saddle, that the frets are a little bit closer together, which is good for an older guy like me now. And also it just allows me to, use more bluesy techniques like bending. Things like that are easier to do because the strings aren't tuned as tight as a longer scale guitar. On the other hand, if you go too short, sometimes the bass can sound a little floppy. So I think that this 24.9 is kind of the magic number for me, because I'm getting a lot of tone and a lot of playability. And still, like at the moment, my guitar is tuned down to C. And I think for a short scale guitar, it still sounds pretty big. So that was really important to me, is getting that number. Some other things about this guitar that are different from the standard OO, it's a little wider. It's 1 in 13/16 for the left hand, which I think when you first pick it up, you're thinking, that's wide. But really, it's for me, it's much more easy to play in terms of changing chords cleanly. If I have chords where maybe big complex chords where I need some open strings and fretted strings and some stretching, it lessens the chance that the back of the finger is going to bump into the open string and stuff like that. So a little bit more like a classical guitar. For the right hand, it's 2 1/4, which isn't maybe quite as wide as some fingerstyle guitars, but it's a little wider than maybe the typical dreadnought. And for me, this was the perfect splitting of the difference between what I think is the ideal flat picking guitar, which I do also on this guitar, and a fingerstyle guitar. What else can I say about this guitar? It's a little bit deeper. It's about 1/8 of an inch deeper, which might seem silly, but I think if you do the math of the surface area times 1/8 of an inch, it's actually a few more cubic inches of acoustic box, I guess. But it's not technically a deep body guitar. I think some little guitars that are really deep, they have impressive bass from the player's perspective, but they don't quite project as well. So this seemed to be just give us a little more beef, but still a very projecting guitar. I think one might think of this as a classical guitar with piano strings on it. Basically, it's that same size of a classic Spanish guitar. So I think I'll talk for a minute about some of my other gear stuff, because I know people like to talk about that stuff. And I get asked a lot about the finger picks. I use Alaska finger picks and a Fred Kelly thumb pick. I was just born with really short, thin nails. Using my nails would be my preference, but it's just not an option for me. And I have not had good luck with acrylics, so this is just what I have to do. But I actually really like these a lot, and I've been using them for about 10 years now. I buy them new, and they come a little longer, and I go through this process. It takes me about an hour. I number them because each finger is a little bit different, and I sand them down. I use 1500 grit sandpaper to get them nice and glassy. And basically, I have them shaped, I think, like a classical player would. Basically, it's just peeking out over the skin by maybe 1 millimeter or so. So I'm mostly getting skin, but it's sort of finishing with the nail. So I'm getting sort of more volume and more tone options with that. And I use this Fred Kelly extra heavy, which I could actually go for an extra, but this is the thickest one he makes. It's called the slick pick. And I also file that down so it's a little bit rounder. And I like these because it's pretty short. When you get a real tall, like banjo pick, your thumb has to kind of go up into an awkward position. This is as close as I can get to more of a classical position. I can still keep my left hand down. So I use these, and if I'm going to go work in the garden, I can put them in my pocket. So they're retractable. So that's pretty cool. People ask me a lot about the Capo. I know a lot of jazz guitar players don't really use capos, but I do because I have a real interest in playing bluegrass music or really fiddle tunes. And from that, I've really come to love using the capo. And so I'll use it sometimes pretty high up the neck to get voicings that I otherwise couldn't. So you can get voices with the capo that would require like a foot-long index finger, you know. So I found it really neat for trying to get like some of Bill Evans' piano chords. So anyway, so I love the capo, and I use a Phil Elliott capo. I have two of them. This is the hybrid model. I also have an Elite model on my other double-O. I think I like the hybrid more. It's just a little bit beefier. And I had my guitar tech guy shrink wrap the sides. So it pretty much, unless I'm flying or changing strings, it lives behind the nut. And that shrink wrap sort of protects it from chewing up the wood. But I really like this kind of capo. I think any capo that has the tension in the middle is less likely to cause tuning problems, and also to have an adjustable amount of tension. I can kind of get it just the right spot before going sharp. So it really minimizes tuning problems, and so it's a super nice capo. So I really like these guys. And strings. I use and endorse D'Addario strings. I've used D'Addario strings since I was in middle school. So I currently have EJ16s on this guitar. My other double-O has EJ17s. I go back and forth between lights and mediums, but always just EJ16s. Once in a while, I'll use the EXP coated strings. I like the uncoated strings a little bit better, but if I'm playing back east and it's like sticky and hot and I'm outside, the coated strings are really nice. Otherwise, I don't really have any issues with that. Another thing that I get asked about from time to time is the neck up, and that's this little guy here, which is made close to my house. It's in Vancouver, Washington, right across from Portland, where I live. And this thing is really neat because I started using this about 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, and it's really saved my back. It used to be that when I didn't have it, I kind of played like this. And seeing enough people's comments of pictures of me online, like, that looks painful, that's horrible. And the truth is I was running into a lot of back stuff, and I knew I needed to get the neck up. Tried using the footstool, didn't work for me, and I tried this, and I just loved it. And this one in particular really means a lot to me because it belonged to a friend of mine who passed away named Mad Dog. And so he wrote his name on here somewhere. It says Mad Dog. And he was a great friend and kind of an impresario, and also a friend to the Santa Cruz Guitar Company. So this was sent to me by a mutual friend, so it has that added bonus. But anyway, so it just kind of goes on my leg right there, and then boom, I'm good to go. So I'm at the point now where if I forgot this, I would panic. I can't play without it. But it took a little while to get used to it. That's pretty much my gear. I'm pretty simple. I really only own these two guitars, and they are exactly the same. I don't own an electric guitar or a classical guitar. Everything I do is on my Santa Cruz OO-Skye, which includes playing fiddle tunes, playing jazz, playing in a trio setting. I'm able to pretty much do everything. Amplification-wise, I have a couple different rigs that I use. I mostly try to use a microphone. My favorite microphone is a AKG 214, which I point towards the bridge. Sometimes I'll use an SM57. It's a little more forgiving with feedback. Sometimes I can't quite make that work, and so I'll blend in a little bit of pickup. And so I have a K&K Pure Mini, which is a bridge plate transducer under my bridge plate, and so I'll plug that in. But usually I'll bring up as much mic as I can and then fill it out in the bottom with the K&K. And I'll use a DI out of this company in Austin. It's called a Red Eye, or it's called the DI. I can't remember the name of the company. Fire Eye, maybe? That'll get you there. Little tiny thing. And I'll use that. And I have an AER Alpha that I use, although when I'm traveling, mostly I'm just using house PAs or rented PAs or whatnot.